The forklift battery died at 9:40 p.m., which doesn't sound like the start of anything, but it's the reason I'm even telling you this story. I worked the overnight shift at a furniture distribution warehouse outside Lansing, the kind of place where you spend 8 hours moving couches nobody will ever sit in yet, under lights that hum louder than they should. My name's Adrian. I was 26 that winter, and I'd worked there almost 2 years without a single thing happening that I'd bother telling anyone about. Then in October, they hired Jonah. Jonah Ferris, 6'2", always in the same gray Carhartt jacket even indoors, recently divorced, 2 little kids he had every other weekend, and about as straight as a ruler, at least as far as anybody could tell, including him. We got put on the same loading crew because we were close in height and the guy scheduling us didn't think past that. For the first month we barely talked. Then somehow we started talking about nothing, bad coffee, his ex, my ex, whether the Lions would ever not disappoint us, and nothing turned into something I looked forward to more than I wanted to admit. I want to be clear, I never let myself think about him like that, not really. You learn pretty fast growing up gay in a town like mine which doors are worth knocking on and which ones you just walk past so you don't have to hear them not open. Jonah talked about his ex-wife with this tired kind of love still stuck to it. He was not a door I was knocking on. The night everything started as ordinary and then didn't. We were closing out the shift when the storm came in faster than the forecast said it would. By 11 the roads were already bad enough that our shift lead told us to just stay put till it let up, safer than driving. Fine by me. I'd sat through worse nights in that break room, usually alone with my phone and a bag of chips from the vending machine that always ate the first dollar. This time Jonah stayed too. We sat across from each other at that same scratched-up table, him with his hood still up, tapping his knee in a way I hadn't seen him do before. I made a joke about the snow, something dumb, and he laughed, but it came out wrong, too short, like it cost him something. "You good?" I asked. Yeah, I'm good," which is what people say right before they're not. Around midnight his phone rang. His ex-wife. I heard enough from my side of the table to piece it together: his daughter Maddie, 6 years old, running a fever that wouldn't break, an ER visit, nothing life-threatening they kept saying, but you could hear in his voice that nothing life-threatening doesn't mean much to a father snowed in 40 minutes from his kid. He hung up and just sat there holding the phone like it might ring again if he wanted it badly enough. "They said she's okay," he said, not to me really, more like he was trying to believe it by saying it out loud. "I believe them," I said, because I didn't know what else to offer. He nodded, and for a while neither of us said anything, and I thought that was the whole story right there. A hard night that would end when the roads cleared and we'd never bring it up again. Then something in him just, I don't know how to explain it except to say he cracked open, quiet and sudden, like a pipe that's been freezing all winter and finally gives. "I do this thing," he said, staring at the table, "where I can't breathe right when I think something's wrong with them. Started after the divorce. I never told anybody that, not my ex, not my mom." "Is it happening now?" He didn't answer, which was the answer. I'd had my own version of that, years back after my dad stopped speaking to me the way fathers are supposed to speak to their sons. I knew the shape of it even if the cause was different. So I did the only thing I knew that ever helped, which was dumb and small and probably shouldn't have worked as well as it did. I reached over and took his hand and told him to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it, breathe out for 6. He looked at me like I'd said something in another language. Then he did it. In for 4, out for 6. His hand was freezing and shaking a little, and he gripped mine back hard enough that I felt it the next day. "Keep going," I said, and he did, and somewhere around the 5th or 6th round his shoulders came down from around his ears. "Sorry," he said after, I don't know why I let that happen in front of you. Don't apologize for being scared about your kid, that's not a weird thing to be." He almost smiled, "You're kind of good at this." "Had practice," I said, and left it there, because some doors you still don't knock on even at midnight in a Snowden break room. Here's the part that I still don't fully know how to explain, even now telling it to you. He didn't let go of my hand. The panic passed, his breathing came back to normal, and his hand just stayed in mine, resting on the table between the coffee cups like it forgot it was supposed to move. I didn't say anything about it. I was scared that if I pointed it out, he'd remember it wasn't normal and pull away, and some selfish, starving part of me didn't want that yet. We talked for another hour, quieter, about nothing that mattered: his kids, a fishing trip he wanted to take them on in the summer, whether the snow would let up by 6. Somewhere in there he fell asleep sitting up, chin dropping toward his chest, and his hand never left mine. I sat there for I don't know how long, watching the snow throw itself against the window, feeling this ache in my chest that had no good name because it was warm and terrible at the same time. Warm because I was allowed for one accidental night to hold something I'd told myself for years I couldn't have. Terrible because I already knew how temporary it was. I must have dozed off too because I woke up to gray light coming through the warehouse windows and Jonah's hand still wrapped around mine. Except now he was awake too, looking at it like he was seeing it for the first time. He didn't pull away right then, that's the part that still gets me. He just looked at our hands for a long few seconds like he was doing math in his head that wasn't coming out clean. Adrian, he said. Yeah. I need to ask you something and I need you to just answer it straight. No, he stopped himself, huffed out something that wasn't quite a laugh. Bad choice of words. Ask it. Last night, did I do that because I was scared about Maddie or because I wanted to? I didn't answer right away because I honestly didn't know what answer he wanted or what answer was true or if those were even different things. I don't know, man, I said, you tell me. He finally slid his hand back slow like he was returning something he'd borrowed, rubbed his face with both palms. I've never done that with a guy, he said. Held hands, I mean, I don't even hug my brother. And last night it didn't feel like I was doing something wrong. It felt like the only thing that made sense. And now it's morning and I don't know what that means about me and I've been divorced 8 months and I've got 2 kids and I work with you 5 nights a week and I really don't need one more thing in my life I don't understand right now. It stung more than I expected, hearing him list it out like a set of reasons to run. Okay, I said quietly, you don't owe me an explanation. I'm not trying to, he stopped again, rubbed his jaw. I'm bad at this, I'm bad at saying things right when they matter, ask my ex-wife, she'll tell you the same. He looked at me straight on then for the first time all morning. What I'm trying to say is I've spent 8 months feeling like nothing gets through to me anymore. Numb mostly. Last night's the first time in 8 months I felt anything that wasn't just tired or angry or sad, and it happened holding your hand. And I don't know what to do with that, Adrian, I really don't. But I didn't want to pretend it didn't happen either because that felt like a worse kind of lying than just being confused out loud. I sat with that for a second because I could feel about 4 different emotions trying to use the same door at once. You're not asking me to fix that for you, I said, right? No. He shook his head hard like he wanted to be sure I heard it. I'm not asking you to fix anything. I guess I'm asking if it's okay that I don't know what I am right now and if it's okay that whatever this was, I want to keep finding out slower than last night without a snowstorm forcing it. The plows came through around 7 and the shift lead texted that the roads were clear enough to head out whenever. We didn't get some big cinematic goodbye. We just packed up our stuff, walked out to the lot together, breath fogging in front of us, boots crunching through inches of fresh snow neither of us had shoveled yet. At his truck he stopped before getting in. Can I get your number? He said. Not, I mean I have your number from the group chat, I mean can I text you outside of work stuff? Yeah, I said, you can do that. He nodded like that settled something in him and drove off, and I stood there in the cold longer than I needed to, watching his taillights disappear down a road that hadn't been fully plowed yet, thinking that I had no idea what I'd just agreed to, only that it felt like the first honest thing that had happened to me in a long time. He texted that night, nothing dramatic, just made it home okay, Maddie's fever broke, she's fine, thank you for last night for real. I stared at that text longer than any text deserves to be stared at. Over the next few weeks we didn't turn into some movie. There was no big declaration, no kiss in the rain, none of that. What there was a slow, clumsy kind of honesty. He'd bring up something his therapist said, he started seeing one for the first time in his life about how he'd spent his whole marriage performing a version of himself he thought he was supposed to be. He told me one night, over gas station coffee in his truck after a shift, that he wasn't sure he was gay or bi or anything with a name yet, and that he needed me to know he wasn't using me to figure that out, that whatever this was, it was about me specifically, not about a category he was trying to try on. I told him that was fair. I told him I'd been burned before by men who needed me to be a stepping stone toward understanding themselves, and that I couldn't be that again, not even for him. He said he heard me, and for a while I watched to see if he'd actually act like he heard me because a lot of people say that and don't mean it. He did though, slowly. He started small, an arm around my shoulder that lingered a beat too long to be casual, a hand on my back guiding me through a doorway that didn't need guiding, and then one night in February, standing in the exact same break room where all of this started, he leaned in and kissed me like he'd been rehearsing it in his head for weeks and still wasn't sure he'd get it right. He didn't. It was a little off-center, a little too much teeth at first, and I laughed against his mouth and he pulled back looking wounded until I told him it wasn't a bad laugh. It was the good kind, the kind you laugh when something's real instead of perfect. I've been wanting to do that since the snowstorm, he admitted. I just needed to be sure it wasn't about being scared, I needed to know it was about you. I won't pretend the months after that were easy. His ex-wife found out before his parents did, and that conversation cost him something I watched him carry for weeks. His father still hasn't fully come around, and Jonah still flinches sometimes when the topic comes up at family things, old habits from 30-some years of being somebody's idea of a certain kind of man. He's still figuring out what word fits him if any word needs to. I stopped needing him to have the word. I just needed him to keep choosing me on purpose, awake in daylight, which he has, every day since that morning in the parking lot. Sometimes I think about how none of it would have happened without that dead forklift battery, that storm nobody predicted right, a phone call about a fever that turned out to be nothing. I think about how close I came to never reaching for his hand that night, how easy it would have been to just sit there and let him shake it out alone, the way I'd trained myself for years to leave doors closed that I was scared to knock on. I think about the fact that the bravest thing either of us did wasn't the kiss in February. It was him, sitting there the next morning with his hand still warm from mine, choosing to say the confusing, uncertain, honest thing out loud instead of the easy lie that would have let us both go back to pretending nothing happened. We still work the same warehouse, though not the same shift anymore, his choice. He said he wanted us dating to be its own thing, not something tangled up in a job. Some nights when the schedule lines up wrong and I end up on a closing shift alone, I sit at that same break room table, and I think about how strange it is that the worst feeling night of that whole winter turned out to be the one thing I'd never trade back. He still doesn't have a tidy label for himself, and some days that used to bother me more than I let on. But last week he introduced me to a coworker's wife as his boyfriend, plain as anything, no hesitation in his voice at all, and I realized I'd stopped needing the label the day I understood that whatever this is, it's real, it's his, and it's mine, and it started with a hand he didn't let go of even after the panic had passed, on a night neither of us saw coming and neither of us has stopped thinking about since.